Greetings. Let me tell you a story. The Los Angeles Times some time ago published a story about a gentleman in the Los Angeles airport. It seems that weather had led to the cancellation of many flights. Consequently, there were many people crowded in the airport, many people online changing their flights. A gentleman was waiting patiently for a while, at least online, but finally he had had it. He left his place online, went to the counter, stormed up there and said to the agent, "I would like a first-class ticket to Chicago, and I would like it immediately." The agent was a very polite young person who said, "Sir, you will have to go back to your place in line and wait there as everyone else." The man said, pounding on the counter, "Do you have any idea who I am?" With that, the agent picked up the microphone and made an announcement to the entire airport. "Ladies and gentlemen, there is a man here at the counter who has no idea who he is. If anyone can identify him, will they please come forward?" With that, the gentleman took his place back online and waited. That is an example, I would suggest, of a lack of humility. We sometimes jokingly refer to a psychiatrist as a head shrinker. Perhaps we do that because we know that there's something not quite right when someone gets too big of a head. There might indeed be something wrong. Can you name 10 humble people? Can you name 5 humble people? Does humility have any appeal today? Is it an attractive lifestyle? Does life in the business world, industry, entertainment, educational, or athletic worlds offer any kind of model for humility? As we know, humility is a virtue. It is about self-control. It is about self-restraint. It really is part of the virtue of temperance and moderates our sense of ego, our sense of entitlement. It moderates our tendency to assert ourselves. It really breaks the slide into egoism and self-promotion. In a very real sense, we can become addicted to ourselves, our own interests, our agendas, our own image. Narcissism beckons. But because humility is a virtue, a woman or man who possesses it almost acts all the time with sanity, with balance, with a sensible view about themselves. Humility is an inner attitude that candidly allows one to know oneself, to love oneself, to accept oneself. A person with humility sees their talent and accomplishments as gifts and recognizes their limits and failures as opportunities to become better and saner and holier. T.S. Eliot, in his work entitled The Cocktail Party, writes, "Half the harm that is done in this world is done by people who want to feel important. They don't mean to do harm, but the harm does not interest them, or they do not see it, or they justify it, because they are absorbed in the endless struggle to think well of themselves." Humility puts all that in perspective and allows us to see ourselves honestly. It enables us to clearly appraise and temper our self-confidence, self-reliance, self-seeking. In a word, it gives us a sensible way of seeing ourselves. Does the world appreciate a humble person? Does our culture esteem humility? Is humility perceived as a lack of get up and go? Is a humble person perceived to be a loser? Are we trapped in a psychosocial world that is addicted to the ego? The world of the gospel, as we know, is really a countercultural world. The woman or man who accepts the gospel as their program for life simply plays by a different set of rules. Jesus tells us, "Learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart." Jesus also tells us, "He or she who exalts self shall be humbled, and he or she who humbles self shall be exalted." It is said that humility is lowliness which becomes selflessness. Lowliness does not here mean a depreciation of self, a neuroses or masochism. It is not an inferiority complex. But as the proverb states, a truly humble person does not think little of himself or herself. Rather, he or she thinks of himself or herself little. Humility is a virtue. It's a disposition that allows us to love ourselves with no pretenses. A humble person is not ashamed of their humanity, nor of the fact that as persons they have limits, faults, negative features in need of healing or correction. The virtue of humility really frees a person to be themselves and frees a person to grow and to change. Humility frees someone from the need or the compulsion to wear a mask and pretend to be someone else. St. Paul, many years ago, a long time ago, wrote to the Christian community at Philippi and gave them advice. Paul was writing at the time from his prison cell. He was disgraced and embarrassed, weak and powerless, and according to all appearances, a nobody. Yet this great apostle urged his brothers and sisters in Christ to, and I quote, "humbly regard others as more important than yourselves, each looking out not for his own interests. Have among yourselves the same attitude that is also yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God something to be grasped. Rather, he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, coming in human likeness, found in human appearance. He humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." That was Paul's advice to his Christian brothers and sisters in the town of Philippi. That's not bad advice for us today.